Prevention, which gives anti-discrimination trainings for the corporate, academic, and nonprofit workplace. She also serves as the Women's Policy Analyst for the Connecticut Commission on Women, Children, and Seniors, and she works with legislators on issues such as human trafficking, pay equity, and women's access to reproductive health. She also served as the Communications Director for the Permanent Commission on the Status of Women. She's an author on a teacher's guide and film series, What the Dead Know, bringing to young audiences the poetry of 7 modernists buried in New England. She's been a newspaper reporter, so she's part of the fake news. Not part of the fake news. We need strong newspapers and media institutions. A high school teacher and is a Pulitzer Prize nominated essayist. So put your hands together to welcome Christine Pong.
There you go.
Woo! 1 year ago, lots of people said that the Women's March would fizzle out, that we would not maintain the momentum. In this last remarkable year, it has grown broader and deeper and more ferocious and more inclusive. And now nothing coming out of Washington escapes our notice. Not the racism, misogyny, or lies. Not the disastrous economic policies. Not the rape of the land. Not the suppression of voters' rights. The subjugation of unarmed black people. The homophobia, Islamophobia, and xenophobia. We have seen it all. The deportation of people and the breaking up of families. Mocking people with disabilities and the ruination of our healthcare system. All of this is now part of the women's movement because, as the wonderful African-American civil rights lawyer Constance Baker Motley said, who by the way lived in Chester, it seems there is no limit to where the women's revolution will take us. So we need to let Washington know we are paying attention to the fracking, backstabbing, pussy grabbing, money grubbing, and gerrymandering. The Women's March does encompass it all, and that's why we're still here a year later. So thank you for coming today. Thank you for not being afraid to show your compassion. Thank you for standing next to people you don't know but whom you trust to stand up for what is right. Thank you. Thank you for paying attention to what is going on in our world. I'm just going to sail these like Bob Dylan did. I need one of those. I sailed way too soon. I do want to say thank you to Together We Rise, The Valley Stands Up, Indivisible, Politica CT, Emerge, Ella's List, Action Together, SLW, all of the groups that have risen up. And special thanks to the friends who have kept this vigil going through the heat and the snow. And special thanks to you, my friend. Let's talk about the word vigil. It means literally to stay awake when others are sleeping. And we know the importance of keeping an eye on our government these days. But it's also where we get the word vigilante. So in our zeal to reject the Trump administration's normalization of evil, and in our defense of the truth, we need to keep listening and talking to one another so the power doesn't continue to get concentrated in the hands of the few. This is what the march is all about, saying yes to vigil and no to vigilante. Because contrary to what that dangerous megalomaniac in the White House thinks, there are no good neo-Nazis. The great labor activist Cesar Chavez knew this. I think about him a great deal these days and what he said, which was, Preservation of one's own culture does not require the contempt or disrespect of the culture of others. In 1974, when I was in high school, a bunch of us brought Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta to an old church in the north end of Hartford to raise money for the United Farm Workers. It was a beastly hot night in August, and there were about 100 of us, no air conditioning. And that great man spoke movingly, and then we had this impromptu little contra dance. And it remains one of the greatest thrills of my life to be do-si-doed by Cesar Chavez. I was 17 and he was 47, and so of course I thought he was ancient. And I was very worried that he would pass out from the heat, and I tried to get him to stop dancing. Sweat was streaming down his face, and he said, no, just dance, just dance. He said, look around this room at all these beautiful faces. It's not hot in here, it's very, very cool. So look around at these beautiful faces on this beautiful New England day and feel the heat in this crowd and the heat in crowds like us all around the country.
Yay.
Those of us who've been at this a while are tired. If you marched with the farm workers, if you were a freedom rider in the civil rights movement, if you were a first wave feminist, if you stood up with the African American movement, the American Indian movement, the civil rights for same-sex marriage, we're tired. We've seen it, we've done it, we've boycotted, we've leafleted, we've marched, but we are still here, we are re-energized, and in remarkable new ways, we are buoyed not only by each other, but by some amazing young people who are committed, just as we remain committed. And I want to thank you guys, you younger people, thank you. You are the first generation who knows intuitively that we all have the right to love whomever we choose. You have networking skills this movement really needs, and you have energy and passion that I respect deeply. There's a few things we can all do, young and old. If you are old enough to vote, do it. Don't forget to vote in municipal elections, because they can be won or lost by a handful of votes, and they do matter. If you are unaffiliated, please consider registering for a party so you may vote in the primaries.
Yes.
If you have a driver's license and a car, offer to drive an elderly or handicapped voter to the polls in November. If you have any disposable income, support candidates you believe in. If you can walk, knock on doors. If you can hear, make phone calls for candidates. If you like to cook, make food for a house party. If you speak a language other than English, offer to translate for an immigrants' rights group. If you can write, pen a letter to the editor or an op-ed to your local paper. If you are a teacher, please welcome uncomfortable conversations into your classroom. And if you can speak into a mic, please testify at the Capitol. Your legislators will listen to you, and if they don't, vote them out. Because we are not just saying no today, no to things in Washington. We're saying yes to many, many things. Yes to a free and unfettered press, which, to paraphrase the Washington Post, refuses to allow democracy to die in darkness. Yes to new leadership in government. Yes to that voice within all of us that says now is the time. So finally, stay vigilant, but please stay hopeful, and above all, stay together. Thank you.